Hi, I'm Harford County Executive Bob Castley, and you're listening to the Maryland Association of Counties Conduit Street Podcast, featuring in-depth interviews and discussions with state and county leaders on the issues that affect us all.
Hello and welcome back to the Conduit Street Podcast. This is Michael Sanderson, your host once again. I'm taking the microphone to kick off this week, and I'm glad to have with me a special guest. One of the privileges I get in helping to run our little outfit here in Annapolis and serving all the Maryland counties is I get to hang out and connect with and learn from my counterparts and peers from across the country. And from time to time, I have been able to drag one or two of them on to join us on our podcast, share a few notes about what's going on in our respective states. And I always learn something along the way. So we're not alone in flying our flag in Maryland. Nearly every state has an association like ours. And I'm glad to have my friend, my counterpart from the Missouri Association of Counties, Steve Hobbs. Steve, welcome aboard.
Michael, I can't thank you enough for having me. This is a real honor for me.
Well, delighted to do it. And just a little bit of housekeeping stuff. I want to introduce you and get you to talk about the association. But first, can I get through one semi-uncomfortable formality? I have some extended family who they would pronounce it Missouri, while most of the world pronounces it Missouri. So can you give me the quick version of what is right and what is best? And do I look like a poser if I'm from the East Coast and try and say Missouri and pretend like I'm a real guy? What's the real lowdown there?
You know what? There is no correct answer to this. I have used both in probably the same interview before. And Missouri is like any other state. We have our different parts. If you come from St. Louis, and the first question you'll get asked is when somebody says, "Oh, I'm from St. Louis too. Which high school did you go to?" Okay.
Yep.
A lot of Catholic schools there. So there is no correct way. Missouri, just call us when you got money for us.
Right. Don't call me late for dinner. Some same concept there. I like it. Okay. Steve, give us the nuts and bolts. Our listeners are, to some degree, there are people who are interested in Maryland counties, but honestly, our listenership has kind of spilled down into people who are just generally interested in state and local policy and politics and that kind of stuff. So give us maybe the lay of the land of your association, what the county governments do in Missouri, and that kind of stuff that might be interesting to a mostly Maryland audience.
So Missouri is a very diverse state. We have 114 counties,
Woo.
Plus the city of St. Louis, which them and St. Louis County had a divorce in 1811. And so St. Louis City is a city government that acts like a county.
Right. We have the same structure in Baltimore, for what it's worth. I think we are the two examples where we have a Baltimore County that largely surrounds Baltimore City, but they're independent, and the city operates and functions just like a county here too. So, we're kindred spirits there.
So that's a lot of counties. St. Louis County is the largest county, and we have a little over 6 million people in the state of Missouri. Our smallest county is on the Iowa line. It's called Worth County. And it has 1,891 brave souls that live in it.
Ooh. Yeah, we don't get down that far in population. Our smallest, we only have 24 jurisdictions for a population about the same size. Our smallest counties are in the 20-some thousand.
Yeah, so we have classifications of counties. Funny story about how that came about. Our counties are classified by assessed valuation from their assessment sheets. And so we have charter or home rule counties, which are our large ones that they've adopted their own charter. St. Louis, St. Charles County, Jefferson County around St. Louis, and then Jackson and Clay County in the Kansas City area. Then we have first-class counties, which their assessed valuation has to be over $1.3 billion in their community. And then we have second-class counties, which this is going to get weird, They're smaller in assessed valuation. They're under a billion, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
They operate like a first class county, but they're classified as a second class county with a few small changes. They have an auditor. Then we have our third class counties, which are basically all the rest except for four. And they range anywhere from $80 million in assessed valuation all the way up to about $900 million in assessed
Mhm.
valuation. That makes up the bulk of our counties. And then when they redid this in 1985, I remember talking to Senator Caskey. He was still serving in the General Assembly when I was there in the early 2000s. He was term limited out then with the advent of term limits. And I said, how in the world did you come up with fourth class counties? And he says, well, they were too big to be a third class and too small to be a second class. And we didn't know what the hell to do with them. So we just called them fourth class counties. And they're all right together. And now one of those is moving into second class. And believe it or not, two of them are moving down the classification. So it's uh, only in Missouri will we do things this way.
But it does seem like every state has its own kind of mythology about, well, this was a political deal cut in whether it was 1811 or 1940s or whenever, but we all have these stories that trace back to generations gone by, and somebody shook hands, and like the idea of the fourth class counties are properly the 2.5 class or whatever. I mean, yeah, that makes sense only in the way that all of us have stories that don't make sense, except that's just the way it is, right?
Yeah, we instituted by a vote of the people in 1996, 96 term limits for the General Assembly. Now, we do not have that for our county officials. So when I got elected in 2002, I was the first crop of term limited representatives. And the same for the Senate. 2 years, you can serve 4 2-year terms in the Missouri General Assembly, and then you can serve 2 4-year terms in the Missouri Senate. We also like big numbers, so our House of Representatives 163. Each district is about 35 to 38,000 citizens, and then we have 34 senators. So this institutional knowledge that used to be with the legislators has now moved out to the advocates and the lobbying committee.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many times I've had to explain to senators why we have classifications of counties. We give them a map every year.
Right. And you yourself bring to the table as the director of the association, but you've got your own lore as a former elected official at both the county and at the state level. Am I right about that?
Yeah, some of my friends say I just can't keep a job. Yeah, I was lucky. We had been involved in politics, and Missouri was a solid blue state. Used to be known as a bellwether state for the presidential election. The Democrats had had control of the Missouri General Assembly and the governor's mansion for 54 years. And with the advent of term limits, that changed. I was part of the majority maker class in 2002. We took office in 2003. We were the largest group of new representatives sworn in since the first General Assembly. And now with term limits, we have constant turnover. About the time you really understand your job, you're done. And so what we're seeing a trend now is a lot of people did like I did, went to the General Assembly and then got the opportunity to go to county government after termed out when I didn't want to run for the Senate and found a love for county government. And
Right.
we have many former representatives and a couple of senators that are now serving in various capacities as county government and are my members.
Now, we do not have state legislative term limits in Maryland, but we have seen a little bit of that trend ourselves, particularly in some of our larger metropolitan jurisdictions. We've had members leave the state legislature actively to run for a seat in county government. And usually what they say is, I just feel closer to the people I serve doing this. We're, serving a district in my county or being on the council or a county commissioner. So mostly in the larger jurisdictions, but even in some of the smaller ones, folks are like, this is more fulfilling work for me. I feel like I'm getting things done here.
Yeah, and we just don't see the partisan politics in our counties.
Right.
It's about going to work and doing a job. And so, I mean, I've got longtime friends that I might have known them for 15, 20 years before I knew if they were a Republican or a Democrat, because it just doesn't matter at the county level. It's about being able to do your job and working with everybody else in the courthouse.
Right. Yeah. Potholes don't come in red and blue, right?
Sure don't.
Right. Can you walk through, and here in Maryland, our counties are really broad-based, sort of full-service governments in most respect, but that varies across the country. So, like, what are the biggest things that are sort of guided and funded by your member counties in their budgets and with their staff and so forth?
So in Missouri, if you look at the nation as a whole, this is the reason that property tax debate's been so hot here in Missouri.
Yeah.
A decision was made a long time ago in Missouri that the state was not going to fund counties, and they were going to give the ability of locally elected boards to manage this. So there's a little over 7,300 political subdivisions that have taxing authority nationwide, and half of them are in Missouri. So a library, a special road district, a levy district, ambulance districts, fire districts, those could all be either under the county umbrella, but most of them are locally elected boards that set their levy. Most of them are funded by property taxes. And so the state really only works with the counties at two levels on funding. It is, we get a minor reimbursement for incarcerating inmates at our jails.
Right.
And we run the jails. They're essentially the booking center for the state of Missouri, and the counties do that and pay for that, except for a small stipend we get. And then they give us a small stipend too for assessing properties. It's called per parcel reassessment. And so other than that, but fortunately for us, the state does run all the social service programs. So we don't have to deal with the social service programs.
Right.
But all the other nuts and bolts of roads and bridges and the courts, we do that.
Right. Okay. So that leaves your members with a pretty broad set of responsibilities, even if there exists a network of other entities that might have their own tax rate for a specific service or whatnot. In Maryland, almost all that is just consolidated into the county government and into the county budget. But it sounds like there's a pretty strong analogy there. So you and I were both among sort of a fleet of county leaders who came to a special fly-in event in Williamsburg a couple of weeks ago, run by our national association, to talk about property tax issues. And I wanted to raise that, particularly since you mentioned property tax issues have been hot out your way. Maryland's in a peculiar spot in this debate, and I find that interesting. But can you give our listeners a little flavor of what the angst over property tax sort of looks and feels like in your state?
So in Missouri, we have an entity called the State Tax Commission. Unfortunately, they're political appointments, and so it's been populated by term-limited senators and appointed by the governor. And they're supposed to work with our county assessors to assess the values on that. And they follow the American Association of Assessing Officers. It's based in Kansas City's guidelines. So after COVID, or during COVID, the rest of the nation rediscovered the Midwest. Literally, the influx of people we had coming into the state was incredible. You probably saw nationwide news at Lake of the Ozarks, which is in central Missouri, where other parts of the country were absolutely locked down. And in Missouri, we're the show me state.
Right.
And so the amount of COVID deniers is still strong. I have friends who still claim it was a hoax just to get control of us. Uh, so we had a big influx of people, and property values went through the roof. And then we've also had a state tax commission who I'm actively lobbying to get replaced, that were not receptive to the change. And we have had residential rates in some of our urban communities and otherwise that have just gone through the roof. And so the residential taxpayers have seen an increase in the property taxes they're paying. And that became a very populist issue about we need to do things to help mediate that. And so we've had some attempts through the General Assembly, some successful, for a property tax freeze for senior citizens over 65. It took them 2 hits to do it because they were so
Right.
ignorant of county government. They didn't know how it really works. And we had to come back in and help them on that. We also formed a task force. We're in court right now with the state because during a special session to keep the chiefs in Missouri, that didn't work out so well, to my friends in Kansas. They attached members of our ultra-conservative Republican caucus in the Senate, attached some language on there to freeze taxes for all homeowners, and they forgot to read the Constitution before they did it. We should get that one in court here pretty quick. We have worked really hard to educate on what is causing the increase in property taxes, and also how to address that in a way that doesn't gut local governments, and especially the rural counties.
Right.
Missouri also has the ability counties and cities have the ability to levy a sales tax, and our urban counties that have great retail are largely funded by sales taxes. 3 of our counties don't even have a property tax. But on the other side of the coin, our schools, when I was in the General Assembly and we rewrote the foundation formula in 2005, 70% of the funding for our schools was state money, 30% was local. Today, it's 70% local, 30% state. So school levies have gone up, and in Missouri, that's going to be 70 to 80% of your property tax bill. It's for public schools.
Right.
And that's what's fueling the debate.
Right. And then there's always angst about sort of the nature of the property tax because it's not embedded in a transaction, I think is the reason it gets under people's nails as much as it does. I mean, I think a lot of folks are like, I don't like paying taxes generally. That's fine. It's a defensible point of view, but the reason some people who are generally understand the idea we need taxes for public services, they still hate the property tax because it's on value rather than earnings or a purchase or a transaction that you can opt out of, right? And it gets under your craw that way for a lot of folks.
You never get your home paid for. You're always paying the government for your home. In Missouri, we have personal property tax as well on vehicles and farm equipment, and that they've tried to do away with that too. None of these efforts, though, have included any help to replace those revenues. And so we've spent a lot of time educating the General Assembly to say, how are you going to run these services that people expect? How do we fund our senior nutrition centers?
Right.
How do we keep the library open? Is that important to you? So it's hard to fight a populist message on something like that because nobody likes paying taxes. I think we got bailed out this year. I think the governor did us a real favor because the state has been cutting their taxes, and now we have a constitutional amendment on the ballot in August to eliminate the income tax in Missouri and replace it with a sales tax, a consumption tax,
right,
with no details. And I don't think that's going to be successful, but it's really steered the conversation away from property taxes this year to the
Right.
point that we had great legislation out there that made some really good changes and would have provided some relief while still protecting local governments. And we couldn't get the Missouri House to pass the bill.
Right. Preoccupied with, the one big shiny issue. Right. We get that, how that happens, but I don't know. I think neither of us probably have the worst of it. We have counterpart states that are actively looking to fully eliminate local property taxes, or all taxes other than those that support schools, or all taxes on homeowners or homestead properties and so forth. I mean, there's a variation. It's a little different jurisdiction by jurisdiction, but there's a number of states where the anti-property tax push has become really intense. And for the states where it's relatively easy to just pass petitions and put something on the ballot as an initiative, some of these get poorly constructed and then thrown onto the ballot. And those who are worried about public services end up having to do an awful lot of work to try and set the record straight. That's a really tough spot. Maryland doesn't have the direct initiative process like that, so we're a little bit cushioned from that kind of process, and I'm grateful for that sometimes. Yeah.
Our initiative petition process is simple majority.
Wow.
And you only have to get signatures out of 4 of the 8 congressional districts.
Mm.
And so there's actually an initiative on the August ballot to increase that threshold as well. I feel certain that will fail as well. So initiatives like Ohio, where an out-of-state group can come in and put elimination of property taxes on the ballot, is a real concern for Missouri.
Right. Oh my gosh. Was I ever panicked listening to the story from our counterparts in Ohio about, what felt like a very, I don't know, well-oiled machine operation coming to their state to pitch the idea of a ballot question. And I mean, things went sideways and so forth, and they built a big coalition, but boy, that's a long, deep exhale to realize, well, at least we don't have that.
Michael, sometimes it's good to live in a flyover state. The bad ideas take 2 or 3 years to come from Florida and Texas and Georgia and trickle up here.
I will buy that. I will say we're on the weird side of the property tax debate because if anything, our counties in Maryland are feeling a lot of pressure from the state to help share and absorb costs, both for education and other functions of government. Our state has a budget crisis, and some of that inevitably turns into shifts onto counties and so forth. And we really have nowhere to go to pick up those costs other than our property tax. We have county level income taxes here. We're one of a kind in that regard instead of sales taxes, but those are capped and limited. It's the property tax is the only place to go to pick up $100 or $400 million of new costs. And so it's just kind of weird where half the country is trying to get completely out of the property tax business. And here in Maryland, we're trying to say, hey, aren't we doing enough here? Let's not make it worse.
Yeah.
I mean, part of that debate is about the housing market. I'm interested. Do you all, it's a flyover state, but I feel like these problems with affordable housing and maybe a shortage of supply in the housing market, we're feeling that acutely here, but that map doesn't feel exclusive to particular areas or whatnot. Are you feeling a squeeze on that front with folks having difficulty finding, homes around where your teachers and firefighters and so forth, live near where they serve and work?
Yeah, we really are. And we've seen some attempts by the General Assembly to limit that. Large corporations, a lot of times from the East Coast or the West Coast, are coming in and they're rapidly buying up rental properties and owning them. So there's been some efforts by the General Assembly. They're simply taking them out of the market. And so there's not as much rental housing available, which puts pressure on startup homes.
Yeah.
And my daughter lives in Kansas City, and they bid on, I'm from rural Missouri. I was raised where, if somebody's asking $500,000 for the house, you offer $460,000. Well, In the urban areas, you offer 30 to 40 over the asking price and write a letter to the owner and tell them why you should get the opportunity to buy their home.
Right.
And they sell in 24 hours.
Right. No, we have the same thing happening here in the relatively desirable sectors of the market in particular. I mean, I think we've got a shortage at every level, and as a policy matter, I think the focus is most acutely on the affordable and attainable housing. But I think we've got a shortfall at just about every strata. I mean, it's a function of a ton of different things. I'm sure you experience the same thing, though. Our legislature looks at it and feels like, well, I can't pass a bill to change the interest rate and to make more projects pencil out and become attractive for would-be developers and builders, but I can write a bill to like force those local governments to approve things faster, or put a shot clock or other things like that. Like we get legislation like that all the time.
Well, we forged an alliance with the Realtors Association in Missouri because the General Assembly wanting to cut taxes for senior citizens by saying that it's frozen when you turn 65 and you're going to pay the same amount incentivizes them to not downsize.
Right.
And that, I mean, for somebody to get a starter home, somebody that was living in that starter home has to move into their second home, and that has to be available. And somebody that's our age that's looking for a larger home has to have a home to buy. And that's what we're telling them, that your very policies are undermining your efforts to find housing for people. And then we take in consideration how costly the market is. And then we've got short-term rentals, which, we're hosting the World Cup right now in Kansas City. And my daughter turned down $60,000 for 2 weeks to rent her home. And I told her how stupid she was for that.
Right.
But she didn't want to do the repairs that would take on the home and all that. I understand that. I wouldn't want somebody living in my home either. But this year there was a big push to get change it that in Missouri, if you have an Airbnb and you're renting it out short term, that if you rent it out more than 30 days a year, it's assessed commercially. And there was several pieces of legislation to say that no, if you rented it out for short-term rentals, it wasn't treated like a hotel and you didn't have to pay commercial, it was residential. And they really wanted to get that passed for World Cup. And I knew they wanted to do that. So our property tax bill that I thought was very fair magically got attached to the short-term rentals bill that the Speaker of the House dearly wanted. But at the end of the day, they didn't really want property tax reform or short-term rentals because it died
Right.
the last day of session.
No surprise. I suspect the emergence of the big platforms promoting short-term rentals as a viable alternative to staying at a conventional hotel or motel has like changed the game. It's another one in these areas where a market changes and then the government kind of scrambles to catch up.
Yeah.
And we're all in that situation one way or another. We haven't had the debate here about at what point does an owner-occupied property really lose that status once it's become available for, the occasional stay, 10 days a year, 30 days a year, 90 days a year. I'm sure we've got plenty of properties that are getting property tax cap benefits in Maryland because you live in the home, but are actually, in fact, really, Airbnb properties, right?
So in Missouri, it's not the debate. If it's owner occupied, it's residential, even if you rent it out. But we had people come to the hearing and testify that said, I've built my business model on these 15 Airbnbs, and you're going to charge me commercial. I'm going to lose money. Well, you just said the magic words. It's a business. So that should be assessed commercially. We will have this fight again next year. I suspect some of the wind will be taken out of it because World Cup will be over. But yeah, that is a big push nationwide
Yeah.
for short-term rentals.
Yeah. For what it's worth, we're pleased in Maryland to have gotten a bill to basically to hold the platforms responsible. We want to make sure that these houses are safe. And like I think there's a tension between the government and the platforms want to keep their clients are the property owners who want to become hosts and don't want to have a direct relationship with the government. I don't want to run a B&B where
Yeah.
somebody has to come into my house and check that my kitchen is up to commercial standards and that I have, ventilation and all these other sorts of things. And that probably is too much to ask for someone who just has a home and rents out a room from time to time. But to make sure that they've got a carbon monoxide detector and working, fire detectors and so forth, that seems an awfully reasonable thing to make sure somebody has actively checked. And the platforms say they do it. We're holding them accountable in Maryland. And I think that debate's going to continue as well. We're just trying to find like the right equilibrium here. I think all the states are going through this, right?
Yeah, balance is always a hard thing to find. Your members would probably find this amusing. Probably 80% of my counties do not have planning and zoning in them. It's only the larger ones that do. And to get planning and zoning, it has to go for a vote of the people. And the ag community has historically killed that in rural Missouri, even though agriculture is exempt from planning and zoning. So it's a wild environment out there.
Right. Yeah, we've got one Appalachian county that doesn't have countywide zoning. And for us, they're the anomaly. The rest of our jurisdictions all do hold that as an inherent local power. So I'm intrigued then in your rural jurisdictions, you've got to be feeling this too. Are you getting pressure on agricultural parts of the state? Folks coming out and saying, stop growing corn, stop growing soybeans. Silicon's the way to go. Sign this contract and we want to put up solar fields and generate clean energy. Are you getting that kind of push in the rural parts of your state like we are?
Yeah, we really are. My home county, I was presiding commissioner there for a dozen years before I took this position. 26,000 people. The county seats 10,000 people in it. But we're also the number one producer of soybeans in the state and the number two producer of corn. I myself, with my wife and my nephew, farm 1,200 acres of corn and soybeans. And there's a lot of interest in putting solar farms on the farmland out there. And we are knee deep in the battle over data centers right now. As a matter of fact, we hosted an event. We put it on in conjunction with the Missouri Municipal League and the Missouri School Boards Association. Between the three of us, we have over 10,000 elected officials statewide, and we work together closely. A lot of our issues are all the same when we're at the Capitol. And we were limited on the number of people, so we had 300 people at the event and brought in experts from around the nation and from here in the state on data centers and what they're looking for. There is a huge social media push saying how bad data centers are. I was fortunate when I was in the General Assembly in the early 2000s. We were desperately trying to get data centers to come to Missouri, and we didn't have the infrastructure built up in place then. But now they're looking at us.
Right. Yeah, that constellation of policy issues around energy sources and supply, whether it's clean or just we need more, and then big energy users like the data centers responding to everybody who wants, high-end compute and so forth. And then people panicked about their electric bills going up. We've got our share of all that. All this stuff is connected, but it's sort of, I don't know. I've been doing this work for our counties for a pretty long time. 15 years ago, we didn't spend any time on energy policy. It just wasn't really a
No.
local government topic. And now every single time we have a conference, we'll have a session or two talking about energy or data centers or solar development or whatever. And those rooms are jam packed, like standing room only. And it's like torches and pitchforks time on all these topics. So it's just everybody's hearing it from their communities, both rural and suburban. So this is,
Yeah.
it's hotcake stuff for sure.
We're in the same position in Missouri.
Yep. All right. So one of the things I'd love is comparing notes, and no surprise, a lot of the topics in your neck of the woods are ringing as similar things that we've been talking about. But surely you've got something quirky, something unusual, or something a little different out your way, whether it's because of all these Swifties who have been making their way to the stadium areas every few Sundays or whatnot. But surely there's something from Missouri that you can share that might be amusing or interesting, or like for me it would be like a rabbit hole. I gotta go look this up now. I gotta learn about the Joplin spook light or whatever. But tell me something. Tell our listeners something about Missouri that we don't know.
So Missouri, I mentioned to you earlier on, it's very diverse. So we have an area in the southeastern corner of the state of Missouri. We fondly call it the boot heel. And it's like you dropped into the Mississippi Delta. It's flat. It's the Mississippi River bottom. They grow cotton. They grow rice. One of my good friends when I was in the General Assembly was from down there. And we used to laugh in committee. Laney would get up and talk, and then I would interpret for him so everybody else could understand him. The language down there is just different, and you feel like you're in the deep South. And the Missouri River kind of cuts the state of Missouri in half. If you're south of that, you're in cattle country and rolling clear streams and lots of tourism. And you go north of the river, and you've got deep farmland and largely rural communities. So it's a really diverse state. And getting all of those groups together is quite interesting. They have the Boot Heel Mafia, and I was an honorary member of that for a period of time when I was in the General Assembly. But it's just a whole different culture and lifestyle down there. And then you have our urban centers. And Missouri has changed so much. When I came into this association in 2011 as an elected official, we were probably 50-50 Republican, Democrat, and now it's 80% Republican, and all of the Democrats are located in our urban centers. And balancing that for our membership on what we support and we don't is a real challenge. The General Assembly is supermajority red, and that was so different from when I was there. So balancing all of those is really, really difficult.
Yeah, I will say when you dropped that your state, which has about the same population as ours, but you have 114 county members, I'm glad I'm sitting down moment. We have 24, and that we keep our hands plenty full trying to manage the interests and preferences and so forth of just a couple dozen. So I can't even fathom. Right.
So to add on to that, Missouri Association of Counties is not just a commissioners organization. We were formed in 1972 because we have 11 different affiliate associations that are involved with us, from public administrators to prosecutors to sheriffs to county commissioners. We used to be county judges. I hated it when they took that away in 1985 because people, when I was commissioner, would still say, the older people would come in and said, "Now, Judge, I really need you to work on my road." That was kind of cool, but the attorneys really hated it. So each of our affiliate associations have their own conferences, but they all come together in the Missouri Association of Counties because they realize we're all stronger together. And sometimes our affiliates don't get along and we have to navigate that. But as much as possible, we try to get them to pull all in the same direction. And so like my president this year is a public administrator. In some states, it's just commissioners or supervisors.
Right.
And our counties are, except for our charter counties, are 3-member county commissions. That is the executive branch, kind of like where you have a presiding that's from the whole county, runs in the whole county, and then 2 associates, and each one of them have half of the county. And they're responsible for the budget for the county, for the buildings, and the roads. But once you approve a budget and you allot the budget to equally elected official, they can pretty much spend that money however you want to. So when you explain what a county commissioner's job is, most of the time it's trying to get people to do what they should already be doing and making them think it's their idea.
Oh, I do love that too. I mean, but there's like a kernel of what you just walked through is basically the DNA of what makes organizations like ours work well. I mean, as you and I have spent time with our counterparts across the state, and we get together at our own events and talk about our challenges and successes and that sort of stuff. But it's a really common theme that we're not at our best when we focus on issues where we have very disparate views and are pointing in opposite directions and things are partisan and divided and I feel differently than you. But there's an awful lot of common ground where the smallest member in Missouri or the largest member in Maryland more or less feel the same way about their relationship with state leadership. Like, we want to deliver our representative, we want to represent our members, we want to serve our communities as best we can. We'd love your help. We sometimes welcome your guidance. We would resist a mandate. Like, all that kind of stuff is pretty bread and butter stuff to try and advocate for local governments. But I don't know. I'm sure you feel the same way, having been a local official and now serving and trying to lead them. I always feel empowered by the people who take on that kind of service and want to give their time. Not many people are becoming wealthy serving as a county commissioner or the comparable different roles in county government in our jurisdictions. You do it because of a sense of duty and obligation and service for your community. I love that. It's what gets us up in the morning and makes me want to get back out there and fight again, right?
Yeah, I'm fortunate. I wake up on Monday morning and I say, wow, I get to go to work today, because literally my whole team believes this. We work for the greatest people in the world that are toiling quietly behind the scenes, trying to make a difference in their own communities. What a noble profession.
Amen. Absolutely love it. That's a great place to leave things, Steve. I'm really grateful you were willing to share some time and completely lived up to my hopes that we would swap a few stories. And it turns out the stuff that's itching you guys is itching us, and vice versa. These stories are similar as I talk to counterparts from other states too. So thanks for sharing some perspectives from the Show Me State and for setting me straight on pronunciation and a little bit of geography too. Now I'm going to have to look up the various regions. Incidentally, I wonder, how many states do you think kind of claim that we're America in miniature? Like, Maryland's big into that. We've got a little slight mountainous region, and we've got a little bit of beach, and we've got some rivers and hills and Piedmont and that sort of thing. I mean, there are probably 25 states who each of us think that we're unique in some special way because we have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Maybe it's even universal, and we all think we're unique in some way. But anyway,
I think you're right. I really do.
Yeah, we all get a good claim to that. It's I don't know. It's the American way. I like it. It's a melting pot thing. So let's leave it there, friends. Let's wrap up this walk down Conduit Street. As always, if you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe. That way, all the episodes will be delivered directly to the device of your choice. And go ahead and smash that 5-star review. It's the best way to let everybody else know what you found in our little show. You can also follow along on social media, Facebook, we still call it Twitter, and of course the Conduit Street blog. But on behalf of my friend Steve Hobbs and our producer Chantel Malcolm Lim, this is Michael Sanderson signing off. We will talk to you soon.